Welcome to the Orvis Fly Fishing Guide podcast with Tom Rosenbauer, bringing you tips, tricks, and techniques to help you get the most from your time on the water. Here's acclaimed fly fishing author and lifelong fly fishing enthusiast, Tom Rosenbauer.
This is part two of reading the water in the Orvis Fly Fishing Guide. The last time we talked a little bit about trout and what they need to feed and how they feed. And now I'd like to introduce the topic of hydraulics. It's kind of a scary subject, but it's not really, because you just need a basic understanding of hydraulics. So to start an understanding of hydraulics, imagine water flowing through a pipe, and the pipe is maybe 45 degrees, angling downhill. And the water flowing through that pipe, it looks like the flow is linear. It looks like it's all going at the same speed, but actually, depending on the roughness of the surface of that pipe, there's a boundary of slower water right along the edges of the pipe. And if the pipe is smooth, the boundary is microscopic. If the inside surface of the pipe is really rough, then there might be quite a bit bigger boundary around the edge of the pipe. And that's what happens in a trout stream. Trout can't live in a pool or a piece of water with a perfectly smooth bottom, because they would exhaust themselves trying to swim against the current. What they do is they use a little bit of a protected piece of water and lie in that, and then dart into the faster water, or kind of slide into the faster water, grab a piece of food, and go back to this place that they like to live. And how do you find those places? Well, it's not always easy, because trout find these places by trial and error, and you'll find a trout will go back to putting its chin. If trout have chins, I'm not sure they do, but anyways, its mandible puts its mandible on the edge of a rock and will kind of sway in the current and occasionally dart up to grab a piece of food, and then return to that very spot on the rock, and place its chin right there. And do this not only for an entire season, but people that have observed trout behavior have shown that they will go back year after year after year to the same piece of the same rock until the rock moves or changes, a flood comes through and moves the rock around, and then they'll find another place. But can we predict these exact places they're going to put their chin? No. But when you look at a piece of water, you can say, well, looks like a trout might live there because there's protection from the current here, and then there's a little faster current there, and looks like a good place for a trout to live and feed. So the kind of things that create this friction, that create little dead spots, little eddies, little refuges for a trout are, of course, a rough bottom. Everything else equal. Trout stream with a smooth bottom is not going to hold as many fish as a trout stream with a rough bottom. Stream that has lots of boulders and rocks and logs and things, and it's going to hold more fish, hold more trout than a stream with a smooth bottom. I remember a number of years ago, I have a trout stream in my backyard, and there was a stretch a few miles downstream that I had never fished, and it went through a gorge, and it was a really pretty spot. I had seen it from the edge of the gorge, and I decided to sneak off one afternoon and fish through that gorge just because it was a nice place to be. And I got down there, and the stream is fairly productive. Usually you can hook a fish every now and then, and I didn't catch any fish, and I fished harder, and I didn't catch any fish. And then I finally realized that all the bedrock in this stream, virtually the whole stream bottom, was one big long piece of slate. And there just weren't any places. Not only weren't there any places for insects to live, because insects need gravel and little crevices and pockets to live in, but there weren't any places for trout to hold and to get some protection from the current. So it wasn't a good place to fish, and I learned it the hard way. Hopefully you'll be a little bit smarter when you learn how to read the water. So not only the bottom of a river, but the banks of a river can also influence where you have these little nooks and crannies and dead spots or softer spots where a trout can live. When you have a trout stream that has a very straight, smooth bank, you're not going to have as many trout as a bank that's either has a lot of curves in it, so there you get a lot of little points and bays and And trout will often position themselves right on the point, just barely downstream of the point, so they get out of the current a little bit, and yet they can dart out into the faster current. If you have a bank with lots of big boulders and piles of rocks, that's a good spot along the bank because, again, trout have protection from the current there. And logs in the water, things called sweepers, which are trees that have fallen into the water and then kind of angle about 45 degrees downstream. Sweepers are also great places to find trout. One of the other aspects of studying the hydraulics of a trout stream is that when water pours over a shelf at the head of a pool, at the beginning of a pool, there's always a kind of a drop-off. The water's shallow where it dumps in the head of the pool, and then it gets deeper because water, when it flows from fast to slow water, gets turbulent and digs a little trench. So pools are almost always deeper than riffles. At the head of the pool, you'll find that there's a shelf formed, and the water that's flowing over this shelf might be going fairly rapidly at 4, 5, 6, 7 feet per second. But just below that is an area of water that's quite a bit slower. It might be more like a foot a second, which is 1 foot per second, which is really the preferred velocity for a trout to lie in. And if you can find those places right where the pool drops off, right where the shelf drops off at the beginning of the pool, you'll often find a lot of trout lined up in that exact spot because they've got everything they need there. They've got protection from the current. They've got some protection from predators because just a riffle alone, just broken water, will break up their silhouette and will protect them from predators just as easily as an overhanging tree or something like that. And they've got lots of food coming down through because they're just below a riffle, and riffles are what produce most of the aquatic insects in a stream. So you've got them there in really perfect water conditions just waiting for food to tumble down into the pool. So if you don't know anything else about reading the water, one of the best places you can start, and also one of the easiest places, is at the head of a pool where the water first drops in and starts to slow down and drop off. So if you remember nothing else from this podcast, the one thing that will always serve you well is to try the head of the pool where the water drops off, and you'll find some trout. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Orvis Fly Fishing Guide podcast with Tom Rosenbauer. Since 1856, anglers worldwide have counted on Orvis to help them get the most from their time on the water. To learn more and to shop the world's finest fly fishing gear, including the award-winning zero-gravity Helios rod, visit www.orvis.com/podcast.